Okay, today we're going to go over the answer to the Bell work problem from Thursday, September 17th. So our problem here says, use the figures to answer the question, not drawn to scale. Again, remember that not drawn to scale part means that we cannot use a protractor to measure the angles on this picture. So in the figure, ray CE, which I've highlighted in yellow, bisects angle DCF. So let's look at that. If it bisects angle DCF, that means we need to figure out what two angles are congruent. So DCF, if ray CE is our angle bisector, that means that angle DCE and angle ECF are going to be congruent to each other. Then the problem also tells us that ray CG, so ray CG, I've highlighted that in blue, bisects angle FCB. So then we know angle FCG and angle GCB, those two angles are going to be congruent to each other. So I'm going to mark those with two congruence markers each. Now, if the measure of angle DCE is 4x plus 15. So let's mark that on our picture. Angle DCE right here, I'm going to put a little arrow and I'm going to say, hey, we know that that angle is equal to 4x plus 15 degrees. And the problem also tells us that the measure of angle ECF is equal to 6x minus 5 degrees. So I'm going to mark that on my picture. 6x minus 5. Find the measure of angle DCE. All right, before we can find the measure of angle DCE, now that we've marked up our picture, we need to figure out how we can solve for x. So what we're going to do is, from our picture, from our congruence markers, and from the fact that ray CE is a bisector of angle DCF, we can say that the measure of angle DCE, which I'm going to highlight yellow here, the measure of angle DCE is going to be equal to the measure of angle ECF, which we know because we have one congruence marker on each of those angles. So now that we have that equation written, we're going to go ahead and substitute in the expression that represents the measure of angle DCE. So if we look at our picture, the measure of angle DCE is 4x plus 15. So we're going to say 4x plus 15 equals the measure of angle ECF, which on our picture we can see is 6x minus 5. Now we have an equation. We have variables on both sides of that equal sign. So we need to solve that equation for x. So remember, when you are solving an equation, the goal is to isolate the variable. You want to get the variable on one side of the equal sign by itself, and then you want to move all the other numbers to the other side of the equal sign. So here for our first step, let's subtract 2 from each side. Oops, sorry, 2x. We want to subtract, no, not 2, 4x. Man, we want to subtract 4x, I gave you the answer there, from both sides of the equal sign. And what do you do? What do you get when you get 6x minus 4x? 2x. That's where that came from. All right, so we're subtracting 4x from both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, we get 15 equals 2x minus 5. Now remember, the goal is to get x by itself. So now to move that minus 5 over, we need to do the opposite of subtracting 5, which is adding 5. So we're going to add 5 to both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, we get that 20 is equal to 2x. Now remember, 2x, that's like 2 multiplied by x. So to get x by itself, you want to do the opposite of multiplying by 2, which is dividing by 2. So we're going to divide by 2 on both sides of the equal sign. And when we do that, we get that x is equal to 10. So we found our value of x, we found that it is 10, and now we are happy. But we don't want to be too happy because we need to go back and look and see, are we done with the problem? And the answer is no, we're not. Because the problem doesn't say find x. The problem says find the measure of angle DCE. So now we need to go back and we need to figure out how can I find the measure of angle DCE now that I know that x is 10. So what we're going to do is from the problem, it tells us that the measure of angle DCE is equal to 4x plus 15. But now we know that x is 10. So everywhere we see an x in this equation, we're going to replace it with a 10. So this turns into the measure of angle DCE equals 4 times 10 plus 15 because we know x equals 10. So everywhere we saw an x in the equation, we substituted in a 10. Now we want to go through and evaluate. So the measure of angle DCE is equal to 4 times 10 is 40 plus our 15 here. And then that would tell us the measure of angle DCE is 55 degrees because 40 plus 15 is 55.